What is up, everybody? How are you all doing? Sorry for not posting up more videos. I know it's been a gap through the videos, but Blender seemed to have been acting up for me when I was doing videos, so I decided to leave it for a bit, kind of relax, calm, focus, and then come back to it, and hopefully it would have sorted itself out, and I think it has. So in today's video, what we're going to do is we're going to build a basic model that we can upload into a virtual world, similar to Second Life or Digiworldz. In this instance, I'll be going into Digiworldz and I will be uploading it into Digiworldz, and it's going to be a simple table, nothing fancy, but it's going to be your first ever mesh model that's created in Blender and brought into a virtual world. So that's your first step. Then after that, what we'll do is in another video we will actually go and we will actually we'll edit it, make it look a bit better, put a texture on it, then get to look a bit more into shading and the principal shader and stuff like that. So what I've done is I've started up a new default scene, okay, and what I have in my scene is my cube, my camera, and my light. Now I don't need my light and I don't need my camera, so I can click my camera and then I can just hold shift, click my light, and then what I can do is I can press delete on my keyboard and delete them out, or alternatively I could just hide them here if I wanted it, but I don't need them, so I'll just delete them. So delete on my keyboard deletes them, and now I've selected my cube, and now what I want to do is I want to create the top of my table, okay? Now I always as much as possible I will scale and manipulate objects in edit mode, okay? I will always be in edit mode, so I'll always have the transforms that are applied in edit mode. Now when I was using edit mode it was a bit buggy and stuff like that, so I'm going to try and use it now and hopefully it'll work. But I'm going to tab into edit mode, so that's pressing tab on my keyboard. And now that I am in edit mode, what I'm going to do is I'm going to simply resize this cube until I get it to the size I want. Now I press S on my keyboard and then I press Z, so S and Z to scale on the Z axis, and I can scale it down to wherever I want, or alternatively I can come over to this scale widget here and I can do it by scaling it down as well with the scale widget. But I know that what this is going to be is this is going to be scaled to a proportion that I want, so I can just press S and Z and 0.05. okay, so 0.05 on the keyboard. If you look up in the right hand side you will see up the top above the sidebar that there is scale 0.05 equals 0.05 along global Z. That's telling me it's scale 0.05 along global Z, so that's half a meter along the global Z. So I can press enter and that's perfectly fine. So there is the top of my table, okay, so that's pretty easy. So I've scaled it. That is the top of my table. Now what I want to do is I want to go to my top view, so I press 7 on my numpad to go to the top view, or I could just click this little Z here, this little Z axis here, and it'll bring me to the top view as well, or I can press 7 on my numpad. And now what we want to do is we want to create the legs of the table, okay? So we're going to use the grid floor as a guide for our legs, okay? So what we want to do is we want to say to ourselves, okay, so if we look at these grid lines here, okay, so we would pretty much say that this would be the proper size for a leg, so we look at this grid size here and we say to ourselves, okay, so this would be the proper size for a leg, so we would use this here and we would use this here, and then that would give us a block here to create our leg. And now what we're going to do is we're going to actually use some loop cuts to achieve this, okay? So I'm going to scroll my mouse wheel back until I come up here, okay? And then what I'm going to do is on my keyboard I'm going to press Control and R, okay, Control and R, or I can come over to this widget here which is the loop cut, okay, and it's loop cut and slide, and I can click this and then I can get my loop cut just as easy, or I can press Control and R, which I'm going to do. So I'm going to press Control R on my keyboard and I'm going to roll my mouse wheel forward once and it's going to give me 2 loop cuts, okay? So if I roll my mouse wheel forward once it's going to give me 2 loop cuts, which is perfect. And I have my 2 loop cuts, and then I'm just going to left click and left click again to drop them into place. And now what I want to do is I want to match my loop cut up to this line here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my scale widget over here, or I could press S and Y, or S and X because it's on the X axis. So I could press S, X and scale it, or I could just click this scale widget, and then I could just left click the X axis here, and I could just bring them down and then just scale them to here. So now they're pretty much kind of matched up onto you know, that line there. Okay, so I suppose we could kind of fine tune it if we wanted then, you know, but anywhere around that line is fine, you know. So we've got our two loop cuts and they're matched up to this line here as we wanted in the first place. Now we need to put two more loop cuts, control and R again, and this time we want to put a loop cut from side to side rather from top to bottom. So you basically just, when you press control R, you just bring your mouse over to the left or the right hand side, whichever you want, and it will give you the loop cut there, and then you simply roll your mouse wheel forward again, and then you get two loop cuts again. Left click again, and then this time we want to left click this widget here, the Y axis, and bring it up to the line here. So as you can see now, we have our loop cuts, and they're on this line here and on this line here. Now they're not specifically mad centered or whatever, so it doesn't really matter too much, you know. You don't have to be too precise, but if you wanted to, you could, when you're moving this, you could actually you know, you could actually hold shift on your keyboard and it will move it ever so slightly, so it'll move it slower. So if you hold shift on your keyboard while moving this, it'll actually hold it slower, so it's not as fast, you see. It's actually slower, and it gives you a pinpoint of where you actually you know, want to scale them to, you know. But yeah, you can play around with that and get it, but either way it's in the vicinity of what I want, so that's fine. Okay, so now we have you know, our four boxes. So this time what we need to do is we need to actually go and we need to extrude this down. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to double tap A and we're going to deselect everything. Then we're going to press 1 on our numpad, right? We can press 1 on our numpad, or what we can do is we can simply press you know, we can press one of these widgets here and it'll bring us to the same thing. So if I pressed 1 on my numpad, I get to my orthographic front view, or I could just simply click this green widget here and it's the same thing. And now what I want to do is I want to actually go and I want to actually hold in my middle mouse wheel. Okay, and then what I want to do is I want to actually come up here a small bit like this. So I hold in my middle mouse wheel and bring it up a small bit until I'm faced with the bottom of the cube itself. And alternatively, you could go into bottom view, so you could essentially go and you know, you could go into your bottom view, and then you could actually you know, go and click it and then get where you want. But it's just as easy to do it this way. So what we're going to do now is we're going to extrude these faces out to make our legs. Okay, so the last step, what we want to do is we want to come up here to the left hand side, and we want to choose the face select mode. So we choose the face select mode, and then we click this face here. So we have this face highlighted here, as you can see, and then we hold shift, click, click and click. So shift and left click all around until we have all four faces. And once we have all four faces, then we just press 1 on our keyboard again, or we could simply press the little green dot as we had the last time. And now what we want to do is we want to extrude it out by about 4.5 meters. So there's the half, so 1, 2, 3, 4, and then that's a half. Okay, let's say 5.5. Okay, so let's say 5.5, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 5 would be here, and then that half as well. So I'll press E on my keyboard, okay, E to extrude, and then once I've pressed E on my keyboard, which doesn't seem to be working for the moment, so there we go. Now this is where Blender was bugging up for me, so just give me 1 second and I'll get back to it. So yeah, so if I press E on my keyboard to extrude, now as you see I can extrude down, and I press Z to lock it to the Z axis. So I want to go down that half, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 5.5, and then I'll press enter, and then I can move around, and now I have my basic table shape. So as you see right now, at the moment I have my basic table, so I'm after extruding out my legs and I have the top of my table. If I press tab and I go into solid mode, um, now you can see that we actually have the table, and it's just a standard basic table at the moment. But what we need to do is, these edges look a small bit too kind of, sharp, they're a bit too sharp here. So the reason why the reason why I went and I edited it in edit mode is so that I could use the bevel tool, because if you edit outside the edit mode, your scale and proportions might be off. So if you were to edit it outside of edit mode, say if I was to stretch it like this, as you can see now, the scale here is it's off, and then you have to negatively reset these again to 111, and you would do that by pressing Control A and then applying the scale. But when you do it in edit mode, the scale is always there, so you don't have to worry about pressing Control A to adjust your scale or add your scale. It's always done it. So that's why I like to model and stretch and all in edit mode, because then it makes it easier for me when I come back in just to apply my bevel. So how we're going to apply a bevel to this, okay guys, is simply we're going to go back into edit mode. So tab back into edit mode, A to select all, okay, and then what we're going to do is we're going to press Control B on our keyboard, okay. So Control B on our keyboard for the bevel tool, so Control B, and now as you see, when I move my mouse now, I can actually add a bevel to the table itself to give it a smoother edge. Now if I move my mouse, it's a bit too fast, but if I actually hold shift on my keyboard, so I have to press Control B, if I hold shift on my keyboard, now I can give it just a little small edge and make it look a bit cleaner. So no, you don't have to go real major fancy with it, just give it a little small edge, and then all you do is press left click. Now when you tab out of edit mode, as you can see now, the edges are a bit more smoother, so they're not as jagged. Like they wouldn't be as jagged on a normal table. They would be pretty much sanded off, because if they were like sharp, then people would obviously walk into them and end up cutting their leg or whatever. So they would be a bit kind of yoke. Okay, so perfect, we have our table and we have it made. So now let's upload it in World. Okay, so first of all, what we need to do is we need to save this as a mesh model that can be read by the viewer in World to upload it. So this is of course going to be a collada.dae. Okay, so we simply go to File, we go to Export, Collada default.dae. Okay, so this is a mesh file that can be read by the viewer as a mesh and uploaded. So Collada default.dae, save it to my desktop, and I'm going to save it as table test and export Collada. Okay, cool. So it's exported to Collada and it's exported one object. So now if I go into World, okay, as you can see I'm in World here, and if I go to build and then I go to upload and I upload a mesh model, I'm using Firestorm 5.1.7.55786, which is an open sim release of Firestorm. And if I go mesh model, it's going to point me to ask where I want my mesh model, and I'm just simply going to go to table test.dae and open, and there we go. There is our mesh model ready to upload. We can just go and name it here, table test. Calculate weights and fees. It's not really a big massive model, so we don't have to worry about any triangles and vertices and all. Just calculate weights and fees, upload, and then if we drop it down on the ground, we have our table in World. And when we get into texturing, we'll be able to put a texture on it, but for the moment we can just make it white. And yeah, there is your first ever table created and uploaded in World. There, as you can see, it is in Blender, the table, and there is the table in World. So there is your first ever model in World that you have created. And in another video we will work on creating some legs, slats that come across here and stuff, and we will add to it and stuff like that, and we'll add a basic texture and we'll do a dirty unwrap and make it look kind of a bit better. But yeah guys, make sure to, if you're following along, make sure to save your DAE or save your blend file. So file, So file, save as, and then save your blend file where you want. I'm going to save it as table test blend. That means I can open it at any time and I can continue to work on it, and I will be using this one as I continue to work on them. So yeah guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. Drop a like. Any questions, please do drop it into the comments. Stay tuned for the next video on this. I hope you're enjoying the videos guys, and thank you so much for tuning in.